Coffee time again, exposing the truth. Welcome to Coffee time again, exposing the truth. Dale at the microphone, the show that demonstrates how history repeats itself. He digs into the past, shows what happens, and how it is happening now. Follow the path of history to where it goes, then relate it to today to reveal the connections. The culture that forgets its history has no future. A history buff and loves to talk about it, going back as far as ancient Greeks and Egyptians and beyond. So grab your coffee, your chair, and listen to the show. Hope you enjoy.
Hello, America. This is and the world. I have listeners from around the world. Welcome to the show. This is Coffee Time Again. I am Dale, your host. This is where we expose the truth. And today we're exposing the truth of the illegal activities of the United States government on several levels, including race relations, just a bunch of stuff that they're doing that is illegal, unconstitutional, in fact, dangerously unconstitutional, as a matter of fact. And we have Tawanna here to tell us what he's doing, how he's doing it, what he hopes to accomplish. And I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm going to help him to the best of my ability. This show is one way, and there's other ways that you can help too. Donate to his cost, as he's doing this for free. So donate to the cost when you can, as much as you can. Donate often, as a matter of fact. And download his and go to his website. I'll be giving it to you later. And download the affidavit that he's got to help get this going. He'll explain that when he gets his turn, which will be just right now. Hello, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Dale. Thank you.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background?
Yeah, so 9 years ago, I was on the other side. I worked for government, and I did a lot of work, high-level government, particularly with Homeland Security, or this notion that we call Homeland Security. But during a period of things that happened to me that was a little bit unpredictable, I found myself suffering in ways that I had never suffered really before, and as a result, I changed my perspective rather dramatically, because Homeland Security is really just code word for domestic terrorism. You don't protect the people or the government from the people, you protect people from the government. And I was on the wrong side. And it took me changing my perspective to be able to understand that, because, at the time, I served 8 years in the military. I was a special operations officer. I was, extremely successful in a lot of different things. I was the youngest chairman of the National Physical Security Council. I was a past chairman of the National Transportation Security Council. I was appointed 4 times chairman of the Advanced Video Surveillance Working Group for Homeland Security. I was also a member of the Critical Infrastructure Working Group as a subject matter expert for maritime security. I had a lot of big hats that I wore, a lot of titles that I had, but honestly, what I came to understand is that I was failing miserably at 2 of the most important titles that a man could have, and that was husband and father. And so I knew back then that I needed to change the way that I was doing things, because I wanted to set the right example for my children. A lot of this has been for them, because if I'm going to be proud of the man that my son becomes, I must first be proud of the man that he emulates. And if I'm going to be the type of man that my daughters are going to marry, then I better be the type of man that I would approve for them. So, it was largely coming to terms with the way that I was heading and how I was unhappy with that heading, that I decided it was time for me to go ahead and come back and start doing things right. And so I always was planning on being federal law enforcement. When I left the military, I went into work for intelligence, for an intelligence agency for a brief period of time, before going to work for Department of Energy and then Homeland Security, and starting my own engineering firm. And we were extremely successful. We were the 13th fastest growing company in Washington State back in 2013. The following year, we were the 22nd national emergency small business. We were extremely successful. I was making $800,000 a year. But when I went through that divorce, it was brutal. And so, like I said, I started seeing people that didn't exist before. And it wasn't that they weren't real. It's that I couldn't understand that they were real because I didn't understand their perspective. So sometimes in order to help others, you got to suffer alongside them. So that's just God's way of preparing us. And so no one will fight for something they don't believe in. I believe in this now. I understand that there's injustice in this world. I understand why the injustice exists. But I know that God's called me in to help bring about an understanding and bridge this gap between what we call the civilian population and this system, this threat mitigation system that is way too complicated for the people to understand. So I have a master's in substantive law, which is the exact opposite of an attorney. I'm not an attorney, I'm an advocate. I deal with law enforcement. So substantive law is mostly Constitution. I have a master's in forensics, and I also have a master's in information security. And so, you know, what I do is I deal with the adjudication. I deal with the criminal element. I build a case against criminals and bring it into a judicial proceeding. And so, you know, the forensics degree is a degree in rhetoric, building an argument that's so complete that no one can even argue with it. And that's kind of where we're at right now. So an attorney goes through what's known as adjudicative law. They learn about the adjudication process. All of the things they learn are statutes, ordinances, customs, judge-made rulings, all these things that remove freedom, because that's what they're in the business of. They remove freedom. And so they make a person into a criminal. That's what they do. So, you know, their degree is in removing freedom. All the laws that they utilize is in the removal of freedom. I study nothing but the Constitution. And so I fight from that and that alone. And I restore freedom as opposed to them removing freedom. I'm an advocate. I speak on behalf of others, whereas they act on behalf of others. That's the primary difference between an advocate and an attorney.
Okay. Do you work with individuals or groups?
I'm sorry?
Do you work with individuals or groups?
So an advocate speaks on behalf of others in a legal matter. And so Thomas Jefferson said, we gain civil rights as a result of choosing to protect and defend the rights of others. You see, everybody can fight for their own rights. That's just a normal part of life. I mean, you're constantly having to fight for your rights and in your life. But it takes someone different with a different type of expertise to fight for others. So, you know, we all have a duty and responsibility to care for those below us. And as long as we all do our part, then justice, which is a manifestation of divine law, it will prevail. But the alternative is chaos. So the way, in order for justice to work, at least here in America, is pretty simple. I must believe in you to do the right thing. You must believe in me to do the right thing. We must believe in the judge to do the right thing. And then we all must have faith in the system to make the right decision, because faith is at the core of the system. So I don't work for individuals. No. God's empowered me to be able to do things on behalf of the collective. The work that I'm doing is on behalf of the collective. I don't take on individual contracts. The work that I'm doing is literally for the entire country. And I'd love to tell you about what we're doing.
Well, we're going to get into a lot of what you're doing. We only got an hour, but we can get a lot in. We did the other day anyway. And we had that. We 30-minute meeting turned out to be an almost hour. Which I was tickled pink. When you got started doing this, what happened?
It was a divorce. So, you know, again, like, you know, we don't learn to be faithful in the peace and tranquility of life. You know, we don't learn to develop power and learn how to use it within the safety of the status quo or by the acceptance of mediocrity. Those things, they have to be developed and they have to be worked and they have to be strengthened. And that can only be done through trials and adversity. So, you know, for me, it took a long time to understand why these things were happening to me, because I thought I was being punished, right? I thought God was mad at me and that I was being, but the truth is that I wasn't being punished. I was being saved. I was being blessed with the ability to be able to learn some things that nobody else had learned, so I could come forward and do some things that God had empowered and created me to do. So it was the adversity that I experienced, not because of the peace and tranquility of life, but the adversity that I had experienced because I needed to understand what these other people were going through, right? Again, no one will fight for something they don't believe in. I thought that homeless person was homeless because he was lazy. I didn't understand that he was homeless because there's 90,000 limitations placed upon him by an institution and a system that's been oppressing him and his family for 1,000 years. I couldn't understand that, right? And you know, I couldn't understand that prostitute was a prostitute because she was hurt and not because, you know, of the terrible decisions that she had made in her life. You know, these are things that we do. We have a tendency to look at people and instantly judge them based upon an appearance without understanding what's actually happening to them. And I think that, you know, when Scripture says that we got to share in the burden of others, there is a difference between sharing the burden and carrying the burden, right? I mean, we do need to share in the suffering of others, because that's where we're going to be able to understand what they're going through. That's where we're going to be able to develop wisdom, and that's where God calls us to. If we're ever called to do something by God, you can rest assured you're not going to be called into peace and, you know, in a place of comfort, because that's not where God needs you. He needs you amongst people that need help. And so anytime that you go to serve God, you're going to be in a place that's much different than where you expect to be. It's going to be much different than where you really want to be. But you're called there not because you're being punished, but because you're being saved to go and serve Him and to help a lot of people. And I mean, it's been a real honor to do this, because, you know, this country is extremely beautiful. I've been back and forth across this country 23 times in the last 19 months. I mean, I've seen this entire country, and this country is absolutely beautiful. But one of the reasons why it's so beautiful is because of the people. It's the people that I've really come to love, because this country is nothing more than an aggregate of the people. So, you know, when we say there's beauty in all of us, when I say that, I'm not just meaning about this country and what we physically see. I'm meaning the people, because they're worth fighting for, and I'm honored to be able to do that, because, you know, when I started meeting these people within prisons and these people within jails, I'm going to honestly say to you that I never met a single one that I didn't like. And that's a very strange thing to say, but I'm going to tell you the reason why I said it was because when I started meeting with them, the first thing they want to do is they want to tell me why they were there, or what happened, or their case. And I had to stop them every single time, because I started to learn that initially I was, in my mind, judging them automatically. Like, they would come up and they start telling me about this monster that someone said that they were, and I would feel myself instantly saying, "Oh, you know." And so I had to stop them. I didn't want that, because I wanted to be able to develop my understanding of this person based upon, you know, my own knowledge. Because we tend to take, you know, these stories or these things that we hear from someone else about this individual, and then that develops our opinion of them, or our understanding of them. And that's not necessarily true, especially with a system that's built upon lies. We can't say that this person here that the system calls a monster is really a monster. And so when I started stopping that, and I started saying, "No, I want to know you, who you are. I want to know about what you want to do and what your aspirations are." When I did that, these people were vastly different than what the system said that they were. And that's why I have no problem ethically coming out here and fighting for every single one of them, because they're not what the system says that they are. They're not.
Well, you kind of explained it a little bit, but let's go into a little more detail on why are you doing all of this, especially since you're not getting paid?
Well, because I have a duty to do so. So a number of years ago, I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States of America that I will support and defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I'm a man of my word. And so when I encountered someone that was warring against the Constitution, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether anybody is there to fight with me. It doesn't matter whether anybody ever comes to help me. That oath was with and to the Constitution directly, and I'm going to do the things I say that I'm going to do. So, you know, I had no idea how big this issue actually was when I first started. And I can't say that I would still have done it had I known how big it was. But nonetheless, no one ever promised me that anyone was going to be there fighting with me when I made that oath. That oath was with me directly. And this is where we're at with the government officials. Every single government official that swears an oath, every single one of them independently has to decide, are you a man or a woman of honor? And if you are, then you must do the things that you say and promise that you will do. So the oath itself has nothing to do with anyone else. It has nothing to do with what your boss tells you to do. It has nothing to do with what the state tells you. It has to do with what your heart tells you to do. And your heart has told you that you must obey the Constitution of the United States of America. If you don't, then you're committing a treasonous act. And so every single public official, every single person that takes an oath they're all going to have to decide which side of the law they want to be on. I had to make that decision myself. And that decision doesn't derive from a business. I don't get paid for this because no one ever told me I was going to be paid for the promises that I make. No one ever said that I was going to be a millionaire because of the honor that I myself have to maintain. That's up to me to do it. And if I don't have any money here, that doesn't mean that I can go and support the business in violation of my honor or in violation of my word. I have to do these things. I don't have a choice. And I don't think that anyone else has a choice when they swore no to it. And if I'm the only one standing, and if no one ever comes to help me, I'm going to be able to know that at least I'm never going to be known as a coward. At least I'm never going to be known as one of these cold and timid souls that walk into that courtroom and decide that they're going to throw someone in prison simply because they're going to follow the decision of the flawed man that came before them and not the object to which their fidelity is found. That's not honorable, and that's not being truthful. That's a liar, and that's a traitor. So, every single one of us is going to have to make that decision independently. I'm trying to lead them in a direction that I would like to see them go, but I already know where my destination is. And it doesn't matter what they do to me. I'm going to die with the honor, or I'm going to live with that honor. But regardless, that honor is something that they will never take from me.
Took that same oath in 1969.
Thank you for your service, brother.
Thank you for yours.
It's been an honor.
I'm proud of my service.
Yeah.
Despite all the hassles we were having back then. I didn't go to Vietnam, thank God, but I went to Korea and it was just as bad.
Yeah. Well, it's a different era now. It really is. Like, my service, my stepdad, he went to Vietnam. He was special forces Army at the time. He was a medic, and he was there during some horrible time during Vietnam. And he never ever talked about it ever until I went back home on leave after finishing, I think it was dive school, and I returned and we started talking about it. I think that it was right after September 11th, in fact. And my mother and my real father, they were both telling me, "Oh, don't go." And of course I was going to go. But my stepdad, he said to me, he said, "Just watch your ass. I know you're going to go." He understood. He got it. Because there's a certain amount of honor that exists within these individuals. I don't think that there's any person out there fighting right now for this country that don't believe that they are fighting for the absolute just and truth of the principles that America stands by. But the problem is that our politicians and our leaders, they don't believe in those things, right? These brothers and sisters that are out there dying, they are not dying because they are fighting for anything short of the battle for equality, right? For truth, for justice, for the America. That's what they're fighting for. And I don't like seeing people say things about them because they would not go out there and do the things that they're doing if they didn't believe in it, didn't have faith in it. And so, what we're doing right now, what I'm doing right now, fighting for the Constitution of the United States, saying that this is the only thing that makes America America. It's the only thing that we should be fighting for because it's the only thing that's going to preserve this country. I'm not just fighting for those that are living. We're fighting every bit as much for those that have died. Because at Arlington National Cemetery, there's 400,000 people that fought and died fighting for the things that we now have to preserve. And if we don't, then those lives were lost in vain. We can't let that happen. America must be preserved because of the blood that was lost to give us the right to be able to preserve it. And so, but we have to make a decision. We need to make a decision real soon because before any domestic policy that's in conflict with foreign policy is rendered ineffective and we are rightfully labeled hypocrites. So before we can go into Iraq or Afghanistan and say, set your people free, we need to first figure out whether or not what we practice here at home is consistent with what we preach overseas. And it's not, brother, it's not. Because when we say go and free your people, and yet here in America, we have 16 times more prisoners than the next closest industrialized nation, that's not practicing what we're preaching. When we have 5% of the world's human population here in America, but 26% of the world's prison population here in America, that's not free. And that's not practicing here at home when we're preaching overseas, right? I mean, we have a system that is built upon an institution of enslavement, And then we point at China and Korea and we call them uncivilized because they take their own people and put them into abusive and oppressive conditions so that they can make t-shirts and sweatshirts for 30 cents an hour. Yet we do the exact same thing, only we call it justice. That's not justice, that's a sweatshop, right? There's a much better way to treat our people than taking aberrant people and aberrant behavior that is the exact same behavior that our leaders are doing. In fact, in most cases, these leaders are creating the very environment that we're going into to commit crimes in, such as the drug task force. These government officials are buying, selling, and manufacturing drugs so that they can create that criminal environment. And then when the people come in and commit a crime within the environment that government created, government arrests them, sends them off and says, oh, you're an aberrant criminal now, and we're going to force you into involuntary servitude in a for-profit, privately held business that benefits directly the state. And it's the state that's making a decision as to what is or is not aberrant behavior. They are creating the aberrant behavior, the aberrant environment where the behavior can occur. They're arresting you and investigating you based upon that aberrant behavior. They are bringing an accusation against you for the aberrant behavior. They're judging you for whether or not you committed that aberrant behavior. And then they're profiting off of your involuntary servitude as a result of being deemed an aberrant criminal. And this is a situation where there is no neutral, unbiased decision maker that stands between the people and the enslavement of those that they say are criminals. And it's time for us to put something in the middle there, because that's not justice, that's slavery.
It is slavery. And slavery is alive and well in a multi-billion-dollar business.
Yeah.
You know, between the slave.
Well, if you think about it, so here in America, you know, we went and we fought a civil war. Almost 1 million people died in that civil war. And I don't care what anybody says. Don't tell me that those people died for anything short of fighting in the battle for equality, because we're gonna have some fighting words if that's what you got to say to me. Because those people didn't go there fighting for anything less than that, right? We fought a war. We lost 1 million of our own people in this business, this institution that is being ran and proliferated by politicians that we call a prison, but in all reality is slavery. And we know that it's slavery because of the terms that exist, right? The Fugitive Slave Act. A fugitive is a slave and a slave is a fugitive. They're synonymous. Those two terms mean the exact same thing. We also know from the 13th Amendment, and most people don't realize this because this was a little looky-loo from our government. This was a little, hey, we're gonna tell you something, but just to get you looking in the wrong direction while we rob you blind. But the 13th Amendment was the constitutional amendment that was adopted and ratified in 1865, immediately after the Civil War, that was supposed to abolish slavery. And I'm going to tell you, it did nothing of the sort. Not only does it permit slavery, but it codified the legality of it within our foundational law. The very law that is there to ensure the freedom of the people of the United States, in that exact same law, it has the ability to enslave you. And I'm going to tell you right now that slavery is very much alive and at work here in America, destroying our system of government and infringing on the rights of the people, because the 13th Amendment doesn't say you can't have slavery. What it says is neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist except as a punishment for crime. And the moment that you say accept, it means that you can't have slavery. But we're going to call it justice here in America now. So we simply took something, we retitled it something different. We changed it from a private institution to a public institution, and then we told America it doesn't exist anymore. But I'm going to tell you, that's what's led to mass incarceration. That's why we have an 800% increase in the prison population in 30 years. That's why we have 16 times more prisoners than the next closest industrialized nation. That's why we have 5% of the world's human population, but 26% of the world's prison population, is because these states have realized the tens of billions of dollars that they can make every single year off the forced involuntary servitude of the weakest and most vulnerable in our society by sending them off to institutions such as Northrop Grumman down in Florida, where they answer the help desk phone for a for-profit private defense contractor, or where they build the chipset for General Dynamics fighter jets, also down in Florida. Those individuals don't get paid a cent to do that, right? And these are for-profit companies that is contracted with the state, for the labor to come in to do their work, and they don't get paid a cent to do that, and tell me that's not slavery. No, it absolutely is. In fact, our law permits it because we simply labeled them a criminal, right? We have prisons in Georgia that is sewing the tags on Victoria's Secret underwear. We have prisons in Texas that is making hamburgers for McDonald's hamburgers. My affiliate down in the state of Louisiana is building 100 million yachts for billionaires right now. He doesn't get paid a cent to do it. This isn't justice, because justice is equally concerned about both the accuser and the accused. Justice is a process of reconciliation. It's a process of healing the hurting, because hurting people hurt people. So the direction we're going today is a den of robbers and thieves. It's been led by man in order for us to think that this is good. But what we call good in here in America, what we call good, and don't get me wrong, I support our government. But when you're out there killing people with absolute impunity, that's not good. That's evil, because only evil can commit such an act, right? Good is incapable of murdering people with absolute impunity. So we need to decide if what we call good here in America, if it's actually evil. Is that really what we want to be? Is that the direction we want to go? Is that the leaders that we want to have in place that are going to lead our people? And I'm going to say right now, that's not the country I want to live in. That's certainly not what I envisioned. And that's not what I will ever fight for ever again.
Right. I did a podcast. In fact, I've done 3 of them with him. His name is J.J. Carroll. He's a former Border Patrol supervisor. And he says some of these children that are missing, in the system, in the Border Patrol, the ones that come across the border are missing, a lot of them. A lot of them are missing, he said. Some of them are not. They're being trafficked by the U.S. government.
I don't want to go into that because that's a very, very sensitive subject. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this, that I did this for the family. I said in the beginning, in the introduction, this was about making sure that I'm the right example for my son, so I can make the example for him, being the right example for my daughters, so that I can show them what a man, what a husband should be, so that I can be sure that whoever they choose to give their hearts to, when I'm done and I'm dead and I'm gone, that I can trust them because they will have the same heart as me, right? These are things that I did for my family, but at the end of the day, there's 12 million children right now that have been taken from their families, the love and care of their families taken by the states, because the states think that they can raise those children better than these parents can. And unfortunately, what we see is that for every child that you remove from the love and care of their family, they have an 80% likelihood of going to prison over their lifetime. So now we have not only an initial financial incentive through the Title 4D of removal of these children by the states, where they get federal funding for every child that they remove from the family, but the one thing we're not talking about is the long-term financial incentive, because almost every single one of these children that you do that to, that you create trauma, that you hurt in a way that they will probably never be able to heal, because you stole them from their families, their mothers and fathers, from their grandmas and grandpas, their cousins, aunts, uncles, brothers. You stole them from the love that they needed, right? When you did that, you built a system that's going to be self-sustaining and reoccurring. The majority of people that are in prison, they're all someone's child. Every single one of them was a child that was hurt at one point in time by a system that thought that it knew better how to raise a family than the families themselves knew how to raise. And it's time for us to bring this family back, because my big problem is that our founders and forefathers, the framers of our Constitution, the first act of that government should have been preservation of our families, not the last act. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that our families are preserved. And you know what? A family can survive without a nation, but a nation cannot survive without a family. And the destruction of the familial unit that we're doing in our ignorance, so we can advance the financial interests of these institutions, so we can trade on New York Stock Exchange, this is destroying our country. It's absolutely destroying our country. And it's time for us to say, no, get the fuck out of our families, government. You have no role within it, right? This is my child. God made me a father, not you. You can't take it from me. And we need to take that back, because you know what? Government has no right to take anything that God gave to us. They don't have the right to take our life. They don't have the right to take our liberty. They don't have the right to take our voice. They don't have the right to take our conscience, our thoughts, and certainly not our families, right? That's ours, not theirs. Get the fuck away from them. And I hate to use those words, but this is one thing that I'm extremely passionate about, because I did this for the family. right? I did this and I don't care what anybody says. I did this for the family because we've got to preserve this family once and for all. This has got to be the final act of this government. Is that the family needs to be preserved. That should have been the first thing preserved within the Constitution of the United States. And instead, our founders and forefathers decided that they wanted to preserve their property instead. And they wrote in it opportunities to be able to return slaves to them or recover slaves, or, that should not have been it, because that's a business, right? You're running a business because slavery is a business, but my family ain't a business. Get out of it.
Yeah. How did this happen? How did so many states get involved for so long?
So I'm gonna put the blame exactly where it needs to be. And you know what? People may not like it, but the United States Supreme Court is 100% responsible for every single bit of the conflict and chaos and hostility that exists here in the United States of America. Because as long as that institution has existed, they've been putting into place rulings that have been undermining the Constitution of the United States. It's been undermining the Union, because guess what? Peace and harmony doesn't create conflict and crime. Conflict and crime makes them and their institution a lot of money, right? This is a business for them, and they've been running this business because if the Constitution of the United States got its way, they'd all be out of a job, because the Constitution of the United States has declared that all men are to be free, and yet they're in the business of enslaving. Look at the 13th Amendment. This is their business. They're in the business of slavery, and we got to be honest about that and truthful about that. A judge is nothing more than a slave owner. They are buying and selling slaves, and they're doing it in the marketplace, and they're forcing them into an involuntary servitude of a business that they themselves are an agent of, right? Has nothing to do with right or wrong. And that institution has nothing to do with honor, because they're nothing but a bunch of criminals and traitors. And until that institution steps up, right, and accepts the despicable acts that their past predecessors put into place that we have to stand up and call honorable, there's no honor in them. They're advancing and proliferating this concept. So of the first 28 justices that served on the United States Supreme Court, 22 of them owned their own slaves. So what happened now is the Constitution of the United States was supposed to be the foundation. That was supposed to be foundational law. Everything was supposed to derive from it. Constitution was supposed to be foundation. And here in America, we did not delegate the authority for anyone to legislate but the people. Now, legislate is to deal with laws, create, amend, destroy laws. Everything that has to do with laws is legislation, okay? So when the Constitution of the United States, Article 1, Clause 1 says all legislative power is vested in the Congress of the United States, that means judicial branch, you have no power whatsoever. You have no authority or delegated authority to be able to do anything with law. Nothing. We all know that you can't legislate from the bench. No judge can legislate. That means no judge can create a law. So when judges create rulings and then they erroneously and unconstitutionally call it law, case law, there's our problem. Because what's happened now is we have an institution that believes that they make law, case law. They believe that they create the law and that they legislate. And they removed that authority or that power from the people that was not delegated to them. And they decided that they're going to now create law. And that's what's at the foundation. Because a great example would be, if I walk into a courtroom and I say to a judge, Judge, my rights have been violated, where does that judge go to determine whether or not my rights have been violated? Does he go to the Constitution of the United States of America that says, oh, you must have an indictment by grand jury before being arrested? Or does he go to a case ruling, a judge-made ruling? Does he go to case law and say, oh, yeah, this judge-made ruling from 1887, Hurtado is the law of the land, because you don't get it a grand jury indictment because the judge said you don't get it in 1887. That means the Constitution is not the foundation. That means judge-made rulings is the foundation. And unfortunately, judge-made rulings is the exact opposite of constitutionalism. Because constitutionalism is based upon majority, suffrage. The majority of people in the United States, through an authentic act of the people, determine whether or not to amend the Constitution of the United States. That's the way it's done. Refer to the special amending procedure of Article 5. So the opposite then of the majority of people making a decision to amend the Constitution would be one single person imposing his will upon the rest of the nation. Thus, case law is the opposite of constitutionalism. So they're going to the lowest form of law to determine whether or not we are protected by the highest form of law, which means that the lowest form of law is in fact the foundation, not the Constitution.
Mhm.
So they've taken their judge-made rulings. They've removed the fundamental rights to people in lots of different instances, and I'll tell you one in particular in just one moment. But they removed the fundamental rights to people that are defined and codified and enumerated within Bill of Rights, First and Amendments, and instead they put into place their rulings. And they said, our rulings is the law. And then they directed all the states to follow their rulings. And many of these states did. In fact, 42 of them on one particular constitutional violation, 42 of them decided, oh, the judicial branch said we don't have to do it, so we're not going to do it. And then they created constitutional provisions in their inferior constitution that are directly in conflict with the Constitution of the United States of America. And then they went out and started enforcing that based upon the judge-made rulings. Judges don't create law. They create rulings. Rulings must be consistent with the law because here in America, we didn't delegate the authority for judges to create law. That's something that's done in England. That's an English bar thing. So we've got this English bar that's now seeped its way over here, this philosophy of English jurisprudence where judges do make the law in England because they have a monarchy. And that king then delegated his authority for his agents, the judges, to be able to speak the law. And what judges say in England is the law because their monarchy and king delegated that authority. But here in America, once again, the people of the United States, we did not delegate the authority to legislate at all. Judges, you don't speak the law. Your rulings must be consistent with the positive law created by the people. And if it's not, then what you've created is unconstitutional. It's not valid. It is illegal. And it is in all terms and notions seditious, because sedition is defined as the speaking or writing of words such as law established in order to cause disaffection to the Constitution, to procure its alteration in an other than lawful manner. If you speak a law that causes disaffection and ultimately seeks to procure the alteration of the Constitution of the United States of America in other than lawful manner, that is a seditious law created by a traitor to this nation. So my litigation is focused on one very, very specific thing, right? To get in the door. Now, we're not going to have time to talk about anything beyond that, but let me just tell you what's going on here. The Constitution of the United States of America is the overarching requirements that all states must follow. I don't think that anybody would argue that. Anybody with basic civics classes would understand that what the Constitution says is what the states must do. And if they don't do it, what they've done is unconstitutional. So Clause 1 of Amendment 5 to the United States Constitution, that's certainly part of the Bill of Rights. It was adopted and ratified by the people on December 15, 1791. In all intents and purposes, the first 10 amendments are the Bill of Rights. So Clause 1 of Amendment 5 says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury. So that's pretty clear. You got to have an indictment by a grand jury before arresting someone and holding them over for a capital or an infamous crime. Article 1, Section 26 of the Washington State's Constitution, and I use Washington State because that's the primary respondent in our litigation. I only have to beat the state of Washington. If I beat the state of Washington, then all 42 other states are going to follow along with it because we only have to beat one. But what Washington State's inferior constitution says, Article 1, Section 26, it says no grand jury shall be drawn or summoned in any county. So now we have a provision in an inferior state constitution that functions directly to the contrary of the United States Constitution, and now we got a supremacy issue. Now, the state of Washington enacted that particular provision in its constitution because of a case called Hurtado versus California from the United States Supreme Court. Because the Supreme Court in 1887 said, California, you don't have to do an indictment. You can do an information because that's okay. You wrote that in your Constitution. It's okay. We're going to side with your Constitution, not the Constitution of the United States of America. And we're going to say it's okay that you don't do an indictment. What happened there was the Supreme Court of the United States of America fundamentally changed the Constitution of the United States by removing the fundamental rights of an indictment by a grand jury consistent with Clause 1 of Amendment 5. They removed it and they put into place their ruling, Hurtado versus California. And now Hurtado is the law of the land because all courts follow Hurtado versus California and not the Constitution of the United States. Right. Hurtado is in direct conflict with the constitutional provisions enumerated within the Bill of Rights. And as a result, Hurtado is unconstitutional, made by a group of judges that decided to overstep the separation of powers, legislate from the bench, amend the Constitution in other than lawful manner, create a seditious law because they were traitors to this nation. And now all these states decided that they could follow that judge-made ruling. But that's not true, because constitutional law, subsection 171 says state courts and federal courts are equally obligated to guard and enforce every right secured by and enumerated in the Constitution of the United States of America. So states, you don't have the authority to simply follow what the judicial branch tells you to follow, because you have a duty and an obligation to guard and enforce every single right secured by and enumerated in the Constitution of the United States of America. And when you fail to do it, that means that every single contract that you created, relying upon your inferior unconstitutional provision that was created because of the inferior unconstitutional judge-made ruling that they erroneously called law, are all void, because they derive from an unconstitutional statute. And we know from Norton versus Shelby County, United States Supreme Court, any law that's unconstitutional is not unconstitutional from the moment it's deemed such, but rather from the moment it was created, as it was never created at all. An unconstitutional law creates no office, provides no protection, no court is bound to enforce it, no person is bound to obey it. It is as inoperable as though it never even existed. So 1887, the Supreme Court of the United States created an unconstitutional ruling that they erroneously called law. And now that it's an unconstitutional law, it is as though it never even existed. And everything that was created relying upon it is as void as that law is, not from the moment that we deemed it such, but from the moment it was created, Supreme Court of the United States, because you never had the authority to do it because you're traitors the moment that you did.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So, you actually believe the court's gonna decide this in your favor?
Well, that's a question that a lot of us have. I don't know. I can't predict the future. But what I am going to say is that no one would be out here doing the things I'm doing if they didn't have faith, right?
Right.
I would not be doing this if I didn't have. I wouldn't be out here working for free, giving up my life and my house and everything I have, walking away from it if I didn't believe in it, right? I didn't have faith in it. God gave me a vision, and I'm going to live out that vision. And I may be a fool, but I would rather be a fool full of faith and full of hope than a fool that's accepting status quo and mediocrity, because that's not me. So, the answer is that I don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do. I can't predict what they're going to do. But what I can say is that I believe in this. I believe in this enough that I've given up my life to do it. I believe in this enough that I'm willing to get out here and fight for it. I believe in this enough that I will sacrifice my life, and I will continue to do it, even if I am a fool, because I believe in it that much. I have faith in it, because you know what? If we cannot believe in the Constitution of the United States of America, then I'm afraid, brother, we've already lost. We've lost this country, because that's the only thing that makes America America. So if we can't believe in this, if we can't believe in the words that it says, if we can't believe in its supremacy and its power, if we can't get out here and fight with it, then we've already lost this country. And I don't want to live in a world that doesn't include America. So I'm going to fight for this until the day that I'm proved wrong. But I believe that this is going to happen, because all I'm doing is I'm fighting for exactly what the American people believe in. This is all. And once they understand what I'm believing in, I think that there's millions of people that are going to be right here behind me, because they're going to say, you know what? I believe in that too. I'm simply sharing my faith. My faith is in us. My faith is in this country. My faith is in the one thing that makes America America. And if we believe in it, by our faith in it and its power, we can destroy those who are seeking to destroy it, because they're all traitors. They're all criminals. And the people will not accept that. So, will the court hear it? I don't know. But if the court doesn't hear it, what I can say will happen is that they will no longer have an institution. Because if the Supreme Court of the United States can't step up and direct all of their agents, all their workers, to obey the very laws that they must obey, the one law that makes America America, then by their failure to take action, by their cowardness, by their dishonor, they will have ceded and given their rights back to the states, and those state judges will become more powerful than the Supreme Court of the United States. And so that's the decision the Supreme Court of the United States needs to make. Do you like your power? Do you want to maintain your power? Do you want to preserve this country? Because if you do, then you must step up, and you must assert your supremacy. You must enforce Article 3, because absent Article 3, you don't exist anymore. You have no power. So that's the decision that they're going to have to make. But it's the same thing with the congressmen and senators. I was in Mr. Mark Wayne's office, senator from Oklahoma, just a month and a half or two ago. And, he said, oh, this is a state issue. We don't get involved in this. We abstain in this. And I had to say, you know what? If you don't step up and assert Article 1 and your supremacy and say, no states, you don't get to amend the Constitution of the United States, because that's what we do. If you don't have the courage to do that, Mr. Mark Wayne, if you don't have the honor and integrity to do that, Mr. Mark Wayne, then you're not a senator anymore. Because if you can't preserve Article 1, then you just ceded your power back to the states. And then that means the state senators and the state congressmen are more powerful than you. Because if they can create a law that abridges the Constitution of the United States, then that means the Constitution of the United States does not exist anymore. Because that would mean the state laws are more powerful than the Constitution of the United States. And if that's true, then we're just going to go ahead and shut down Washington, D.C., Mr. Mark Wayne. You can just go home, Mr. Peters, Ms. Cantwell, Ms. Murray, Mr. Cruz. You know, you can just go home, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Thomas, Ms. Sotomayor, Mr. Kavanaugh. You could just go home, because you don't have a job anymore, because you didn't have the courage and integrity to step up and preserve the one thing that your institution was established to protect, defend, and preserve. And if you don't do that, then that's the outcome that we're going to have. We will have a complete breakdown, fracturing, and dissolution of this nation, because those that are in position to preserve this nation didn't have the courage to do that. And so I can't give you an answer on that, brother, because I can't say the future. But what I can say is that I believe in this country, and I will fight for this country until the day God calls me home.
Yeah. This has been going on for 240 years.
It has. It has 243 years since the day that court was put into place. They've been putting in place rulings, have been undermining the laws of the United States, and the people of the United States need to understand that there is no honor in that institution, but there can be. But it's going to be up to them, because if they don't have the honor to step up and to assert and to correct this and to call out the criminal, seditious slave owners that they have and the despicable rulings they put into place that undermine the will of the people, if they can't do that, then this system operates on honor. And without honor, this system's done. It's done. It's done. There's 2.9 million people that are standing behind me right now, that are imprisoned right now. Every single one of them is imprisoned on a judgment that is unconstitutional. And I wish I had time to tell you why. Maybe we'll get an opportunity on a future discussion. But I'm telling you right now, every single one of them has got an unconstitutional judgment that's holding them in prison right now that are void. So nothing is holding them in prison right now today except for a bunch of goons with guns. And I'm not saying that I want them out. Guys, don't get me wrong. I'm not an abolitionist. I believe in the system, and I know that there are people that are dangerous to society, and that we need to protect our society from those people that are dangerous to society. But what I can say is that most criminologists across the world, and I'm not going to claim to be one of the experts, but I certainly am qualified to discuss this, because I do have a master's from the most expensive university in the United States, where I graduated 3.98 GPA in forensics, right? In criminology. I know criminology, and I can say that 78% of people in prison today are not a danger to society. Because drug use is not a danger to society. That's a hurting person. That's behavioral issues. That's not dangerous issues, right? People that steal property, that's not dangerous behavior. That's aberrant behavior. And you deal with aberrant behavior much differently than you deal with dangerous behavior, right? Dangerous behavior is what we would put someone into that institution, but you still don't put them in there to enslave them and hurt them. You put them in there to heal in a very specific way. But aberrant behavior is corrected by leading them, right? If my son is a thief, that's because I'm a thief. Right? If my son is a liar, that's because I'm a liar. And if my son is unhappy, that's because I'm unhappy. I'm the reason why my son does the things that he does. And leaders, the reason why these people, these citizens are doing things they do is because you're leading them to do it, right? And you better step up and say, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take responsibility for my own criminality, for my own unhappiness, for my own fucking dishonor, before I'm going to hold the people accountable for their dishonor. And that's what I'm trying to do here. We've got to get these public officials, and we need to do this in the least destructive way. And that means I'm going to call them out for exactly what they are. And if they don't have the fortitude or the honor to step up and correct that behavior, then I think that over time, the people are going to be able to realize, you know, the words I'm saying versus the actions that they're seeing. And they're going to realize what the truth is. And the truth is that we have criminals and traitors that are leading us and destroying our country because they don't have the courage to step up and defend the one thing that they're there to defend, because they want a business and they want to run that business in a business manner because it's making them a lot of money. Look at how much these people, these politicians are making off of very, very small, salaries. All of this is wrapped in and tied together. It's all exposing them for exactly what they are. And we can decide, is that really the people that we want to lead us? Because as long as we have criminals leading us, don't blame the people when they themselves become criminals, because we're simply following our leaders.
How do you see the justice system functioning after you have successfully litigated?
Well, I have ideas and I have plans. I have proposals that I want to give to the people of the United States, but the people are going to have to get behind it. And unfortunately, again, I'm just one constituent of 330 million constituents. I have a vision, and I proposed it. It's actually on my TikTok site. I have 2 interviews that I did that proposed it. The first thing is that we have nations that we can look to as examples for whether or not this would work. A restorative-based justice system, it works. We can see in Sweden, we can see in Denmark, we can see in Norway, we can see that a restorative-based justice system works. And let me give you an example. Sweden, for instance, is shutting down its last prison. They don't even have prisons anymore because they chose to heal their people as opposed to hurt their people. So Sweden is literally shutting down their last prison right now because they chose a restorative-based justice system as opposed to a punitive-based justice system. We have a punitive-based justice. We punish the people for the things they've done. You got to pay your debt back to society, which is why you sell yourself into slavery and you're forced into involuntary servitude, is because it's a business, right? Because it's a debt-based system. Debt is economics. Economics, of course, is related to industry, right? So we can understand what's happening based upon the terms and so on. But first off, we got to go to a restorative-based justice system, which looks at the issue of morality not as a matter of punishment, but as a matter of public health, right? So one of the first things we have to do is we have to switch from a punitive-based system that's under the control of the Attorney General into a health-based system that's under Health and Human Services. And we need to treat the issue of morality as a matter of public health and not as a matter of punishment, because these people are hurting. They're hurt. That's the reason why they're doing things they do, is because hurting people hurt people. And this, again, is also very well known. This goes back to my forensics education as well, because the thing about it is that one of the reasons why people hurt another human being is because they don't have respect for life. And that respect for life derives from their own respect. So when you have a child that is hurt and it suffers in ways that's beyond even what people can comprehend as child abuse, which is what almost every serial killer known to mankind has experienced. These were children that have been hurt and abused in such a way that we can't even comprehend. And then they go out and they hurt other people because they don't have respect for life. Sweden chose to take its serial killers, people that were, and then they brought them into an institution where they woke up, they went out to work, they wore clothes, they came home to a house, they were rehumanized. They were taught that they were worth love, worth compassion. They were taken care of, and they were made to be a human and a person, because once they were, they don't recommit any crimes, because once you have value and respect for life, that life for yourself, you then respect other people's lives. And that is well known within the criminologist and justice system, right? But our system doesn't do that. Our system takes hurting people, put them into a more hurtful situation, and then expects them to get healed. And that doesn't work. That's insane. Another great example is the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel has a community known as the kibbutza. And the kibbutza is such a peaceful community with no record of homicide, where if you are convicted of a violent crime within the nation of Israel, they will actually send you off to live within the kibbutza, because the environment that you're in dictates what you learn. So if you learn to live peacefully within a peaceful environment, then you become a peaceful person. This is also very well known. The environment that I create with my wife dictates what my children will become. If I create an abusive environment, my children will be abusive themselves because that's what they learn. And it's the same thing with a man. The environment that our government creates will dictate what the people learn. So as our government is embezzling money, as our government is murdering people with absolute impunity, as our government is buying and selling and manufacturing more drugs than any Colombian cartel is, then don't be surprised if that environment that you create, government, is going to create a criminal society. Again, we're simply following our leaders. We're learning from them. So this issue of criminality, the way that we're trying to solve it right now from the bottom up, where we go out and we arrest people for the crimes that they commit because we label them a criminal and aberrant behavior, it's never going to work. That is why we have an 800% increase, is because crime must be fought from the top down, not from the bottom up. Because before we can lead our country in a lawful direction, we must first have leaders that are going to lead us in a lawful direction. So we got to start at the top. We got to make sure that we got leaders such as Mr. Thomas. You're a criminal today, but tomorrow you could choose to not be a criminal. Or Mr. Roberts, today you are a traitor, but tomorrow you could choose to lead us in a lawful direction. Or Ms. Sotomayor, Ms. Jackson Brown, Mr. Gorsuch, Mr. Kavanaugh, all of you are all criminals today because you're leading us in a direction of criminality, because you're refusing to recognize and enforce the one thing that your institution was established and created to preserve, protect, and defend. You are criminals today, but you can make the decision to turn and go a different direction. And I guarantee you, if you decide to do that, that the people will be accepting, we will be forgiving, and we will all turn and follow you in that direction. But I can also guarantee you that if you do not do that, and we expose you for the traitors that you are, if this message gets out to the right people and the people of the United States actually hear it, I can guarantee you that you will be punished for the traitors and criminals that you are as well, because the American people are not docile and we're not all forgiving. But you can make the right decision, and that's what I'm trying to lead them to do, because we can do this in a destructive manner or we can do this in a peaceful manner. I want the people of the United States to see it in a peaceful manner, but that's up to them. Because if they choose not to go down that peaceful path with me, then we're going to be going down that messy path, and that messy path is still going to be victory for the people. So if that's the direction you want to go, Supreme Court, bring it on. Bring it on.
Hey, this has been an incredible interview, and I am going to invite you back. It's probably about 6 months. I'll put you on my to re-invite, because I like that. I like to see what the progress has been making. You said you're going to be doing a tour, and
So the next step here, we've served 42 state attorney generals, 42 state Supreme Courts with the notification of this suit. We've given them time to be able to reflect, think about it. We've given them time to be able to direct their agents to act in a lawful, constitutional manner, and they've all chosen to act in direct willful defiance of what we brought forward, every single one of them. In fact, we have attorney generals such as the one in Rhode Island who stated that he's aware that these criminal acts or these unconstitutional acts are being committed, but he's going to continue to do them until such time as he's directed to do otherwise. So that's a problem. We also have the same statement or a very similar statement made by Mr. Bob Ferguson, the Attorney General of the state of Washington, where he said that the Fifth Amendment doesn't apply to the state of Washington. That's also a very, very dangerous statement to make, Mr. Ferguson. So both of those are treasonous statements that they've made against the will of the people, where they're now putting themselves in a state of war by saying, we're not going to do what the Constitution of the United States says we must do until our leadership tells us to do otherwise. And that, unfortunately for them, is you're a coward and you have no honor, because if you have to be told to obey the law, then you're nothing but a criminal. Mr. Namara and Mr. Ferguson and, Mr. Yost and, Mr. Drummond and Mr. Stein or any one of these other assholes that I brought and served notice that you guys are committing crimes, that have chosen to continue to ignore it, and not only ignore it, but continue to do it. Therefore, you are sanctioning it and authorizing it. So we've done that. And the next step now is we are collecting 500,000 criminal affidavits on behalf of actual victims across this country who have been victims of these crimes. We're between 300 and 400,000 right now. We have a little bit more to go. God's going to get us to that number. But once we reach that number of 500,000, I'm taking those back to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to drive it right up the Supreme Court. And we're going to say to them, what do you want to do about these crimes that are being committed by your agents under your watch, your authority? You can either, one, let me debate this issue, or two, you can ignore this. And I guarantee you that you're going to be the first 9 people heading those gallows.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you for being here. You've done an incredible job. I am very, very grateful to you. I will be downloading I signed on to your website, no problem whatsoever.
No what?
I signed on to your website last night with no problem.
Oh, awesome, great.
I
Yeah.
saved it. So I
I appreciate. I just want to say that this is my honor to do it. Like when you realize that you're serving God, like there's nothing in the world that'll make you stop. It doesn't matter what people say about you. It doesn't matter how much money people have. It doesn't matter what they do to you, or because I know the truth and I know who is allowing me to serve Him, and there is no honor in this. Just trust me, guys. If any of you have never served God, just know that is the most rewarding thing that anyone could ever get, because I know that in the end, I know my destination, and I know that I'm going to get well done, good and faithful servant, because I'm gonna continue to do it. So thank you guys so much for letting me serve you and your family, and God bless.
God bless you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, brother. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Actually, we're not leaving yet. I just turned off the recording.
Okay, Dale. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the show. There are show notes and a place to comment at https://coffee-time-again.libsyn.com/website. He hopes that you liked what you heard and will tell others about him. Dale is attempting to get a following that both disagrees and agrees with him. He does not want yes men. If you disagree, wonderful. He is happy to have you here as a part of the Coffee Time Again team. Dale does not talk about the news of the day. He is attempting to give a history lesson that is just as important about what is going on in the headlines of today. Please do not hesitate to contact him. Just remember that Dale wants a clean show, meaning no cussing, name calling, yelling, or hate allowed. You can disagree with him and not be disagreeable about it. Support him and help keep this alive. https://glow.fm/coffee-time-again.